Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. Still have more of a standard deck tech to discuss. We are still waiting for the murders at Manor, and we are looking at some of the more of the version of the Rakdos. But this time, it is sort of an aggro version. If you are familiar yet with the metagame, there are first a version of the Rakdos control or more of a mid-range, but this time you can see here that we have 26 creatures aligned in this deck, so it's working to be like covering out pretty well in this kind of deck. So we are looking at the build by Rooney56 from the recent tournament for MTGO League, and I think this is one of the top 4 decks. We're going to take a look today what are the creature choices as well as the sideboard guides and some other main deck potential of the cards. So again, we have 26 creatures, 3 enchantments, which is the quality of geeks, 5 instants, we have 95 lands and 1 sorcery in the main deck, whereas also 15 sideboard, which we're going to discuss later. So what are creature choices? We're going to start off with the 2 drops. Surprisingly, there's no Evolved Sleeper in this build, but still we don't really mind that kind of list that we can compare. So we have 4 copies of Bloodtide Harvester, the auto default 2 drop for this kind of deck, especially for the Rakdos colors. Then we have the new inclusion of the Deep Cavern Bat. So this is from the Lost Caverns of Excellent set. We can basically take a look at your opponent's hand and exile another card until Deep Cavern Bat leaves the battlefield. The only relevant here is that the bat can still be able to get you some kind of damage raise because of the lifelink effects and the evasion because of flying, and later on can still curve out with your 3 drop, which is basically the Geeks Yawgmoth Praetor. So whenever a creature does combat to one of your opponents, you will draw a card by paying 1 life with the lifelink effect from Deep Cavern Bat that would basically be nullified for the life loss. So basically a very good card advantage if you're going to curve out pretty well with the Geeks from the 2 drop Deep Cavern Bat. And later on you can still have this good mana sink, wherein you can pay 7, discard X cards, exile the top X cards of Black Opponent's library, and you may play those lands and cast spells from among them, exile without paying its mana cost. Very good against maybe for the domain decks. And we have another new inclusion for our 3 drop, which is the 4 copies of Preacher of the Schism. So this card would really help of not only having a 2/4 death touch, but the situational effects is very useful for this kind of build. So whenever it attacks the player with the most life or tied with the most life, you will create additional creature on the board with a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. Now if you have the most life or tied for the most life, whenever it attacks, you will draw a card and you will lose 1 life. So another card advantage effect at the cost of 1 life, or you can still create more of your board depending if your opponent has more life than you. So very good card advantage given. Now that is your best 3rd drop along with Geeks Yawgmoth Praetor. Now for your 4th drop is Geological Appraiser. So this is really the Bloodbraid Elf of this deck. So we have 4 copies to make sure that we can basically curve out with this one. You can play it cast it for turn 4, and you can discover 3, wherein you can display a card with the mana value 3 or less from the top card library, and then later on, if you would not really need to cast it by that turn, you can just place it to your hand. So also sort of a card draw effect. And of course, Shoulder the Apocalypse is given for this deck. And the new addition for the 5 drop is Bornhur Dracosaur, only included 1 in this build. So maybe you would have some situational effects wherein you would need this one as sort of your flyer, and also can give you out card advantage with this upkeep triggers. And our top of the curve is 4 copies of Trumpeting Carnosaur. So this is just also given that you can discover 5, and also can early on can be used as a spot removal by paying 3, discarding it, and it can deal 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So with this setup, you can basically have this one as a 3 damage effect for 3, and later on can be used by this next card that we're going to discuss, the Cruelty of the Geeks, wherein you can read ahead by putting target creature card from a graveyard into the battlefield. So putting this one as early as turn 5, which can also trigger to discover 5, is basically a very good card advantage and board advantage. So, but with the setup, if you want to go slow with the cruelty, you can just have this one cast for 5, wherein you can have this first lore counter wherein the opponent reveals their hand and choosing a creature or planeswalker card from it, and they will discard it. And then you can also have this tutor effect, search library for a card and put it in your hand, and you will lose 3 lives. So any situational, this is a very good inclusion in the deck that can have the most utility or card advantage that can be provided at any given situation. Now for your spot removal, since we are still going with the instance as our basically our source of spot removal card types, we have 2 cut downs, 1 anoint with reflection, and 2 copies of Go for the Throat. And for the only sorcery in the deck, the main deck basically, is a copy of Extract the Truth. So this is not only giving you to discard your opponents for a creature, enchantment, or planeswalker card, but basically having them sacrifice an enchantment. So any relevant card that you can target here is basically the wedding announcement or any other saga cards from your opponents, because black has basically only having this card as a way to get rid of your enchantment cards. So it can be acted as a turn to discard effect, or in the long game you can still have this one to have your opponent sacrifice an enchantment. So basically you can still also target cards like Leyline's Binding to be sacrificed, or you can extract them from your hand early on by turn 2. So with that setup, we have 25 lands which are composed of several mana fix, including also the new card or reprinted card, Cavern of Souls. Maybe this would name into a vampire or a dinosaur, so that we want to be countered. Also included is 4 copies of Manlands, so you can provide additional board presence with this card, wherein you can also have your card advantage, because whenever this attacks, you can discard a card and you will draw a card. But it's only a 2/3 black and red insect with menace, would still be very relevant at most times. And also included are several mana fix also with Turbulent Springs, Haunted Ridge. You can see here Haunted Ridge is 4 copies, and also 2 copies of Black Clay Cliffs, which are surprisingly only 2 copies, and of course Takinuma and Sokensan for the channel lands, which are included 1 ops for each of these 2 color decks. Now for the sideboard, we're just going to do a quick rundown. For the control matchups, you can basically have Duress, that's 3 copies, and also Extract the Truth, additional copies, since this would be also relevant against domain decks and also blue-white control decks or Esper decks control matchup. And for added removals or mass removals against aggro, we have a copy of Brotherhood's End, more of cut down effects since they are just 1 to cast to be able to deal with their border advantage, additional anoint with affliction, also Go for the Throat was a solid spot removal, and a braid for maybe for the deck with Azorius Aggro, basically that uses Subterranean Schooner, so they can also destroy that artifact. So it would be able to get this one before they would have some card advantage out of it. And for mid-range, I think this is Liana is your best answer there. So you can also have them sacrifice this their best creature, and also disrupt their hand by having this +1 effect to discard their card. And maybe for this one, this is for the mid-range, and probably the domain matchup is 1 copy of Breach the Multiverse. If you're going to go long game, you can basically steal out their Atraxa or some of their best cards that can be casted by this one. And of course, a copy of Big's Command. This is more of a utility card that can put up to destroy creatures with power 2 or less, basically for the tokens matchup, and also have your opponent sacrifice a creature with the highest power, or you can have the special counters added to your creature to have them lifelink. This is also a good damage raise effect. And of course, returning recursion of your best creatures. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. So that's pretty much it. I think I've discussed all of the relevant. You can just categorize them as versus aggro, versus mid-range, and versus control deck matchups. And of course, again, Duress can also be used against the domain decks as well. And your mana curve is basically the average of 3.31. We have a lot of 2 drops, but your best cards are being curved out basically by the third turn and fourth turn. So that means that you can just cast at least one card per turn, but with the discover effect, you can still get to be able to cast another one for free for this kind of deck list. And for color distribution, we have basically more of the black of 34, red is 22, but the color curve is pretty much even. We have 22 black producers and 19 for red. And last but not least are tokens. Basically, we still have 5 kind of tokens that are added. We have blood token, dinosaur token for the bone horde Dracosaur, spirit token for the Sukensan, we have treasure of course, and the vampire token from the preacher of the schism effect. So I guess that's pretty much it for this deck tech, Rakdos Aggro. If you're looking to not only play for the Rakdos control setup, I suggest you could go with this one. MTGO League has basically some of the updated deck list or deck decks that are added to the standard metagame, and I also suggest that you could also check this one from the MTG Top 8 website or any other Magic the Gathering sites that produce this or publish these kinds of tournament results. So that's pretty much it for this rec deck. I'm pretty sure I would really try this one in our local metagame once I would be able to complete some of these cards, especially the Preacher of the Schism and the Trumpeting Carnosaur. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for checking on this deck tech video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and see you guys on the next one.